Good to go?
All right.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you making the time to speak about securing your Active Directory and how important it could be to restoring your services. Myself and my colleague from Semperis, Paul, are here to give you exciting and interactive session about how we help our customers today in recovering Active Directory. And we'll want to turn it up after a few slides, turn it over to you for some questions. Paul?
Perfect.
Actually, it's for me.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about Oppos. So Oppos is a small cybersecurity startup out of Toronto. We have about 200 customers to date, and we help them in obtaining, attaining, and maintaining cybersecurity compliance regulations. So if you've heard of things like SOC 2, ISO, GDPR readiness, that's really our strength. And the reason why we've partnered with Semperis is because we believe at the heart of every enterprise is an active Directory or functioning Active Directory. Typically, people do not provide the right care and feeding to this system until there's this critical breach or an issue. Oh, did I go back?
Nope.
Oh, now we're going too far back. Apologies. There we go. So we leverage, our thing is we leverage artificial intelligence in order for us and our team to ensure that your environment is protected. On here I have my two partners, George Pleitis, Chief Security Officer, and James Kwong, our Artificial Intelligence Officer. And together we democratize security technology, focus really primarily on your recovery time objectives and your recovery point objectives, which is actually the business drivers to a good DR strategy. And then we simplify cybersecurity and compliance by making it affordable to all companies of varying in size. Pass it on to my colleague Paul, talk a little bit about Active Directory. Yeah, that goes forward with the Perfect. Green arrow. Back is red.
Yeah. So yeah, happy to be here today. My name is Paul Greeley. I am with Semperis. I'm a senior solution architect. We mainly do Active Directory security and recovery. So for me, about me, it's crazy when I say this, I've been 23 years in the business now.
Wow.
So I started in desktop support and I've moved into cybersecurity over time. But yeah, 23 years, that's a long time. I've seen a lot. Right?
Definitely.
So Active Directory, you know, anyone here know what Active Directory is? Okay, so it's funny because as we go on over time, Active Directory becomes a less and less known thing in an environment, right? So
absolutely.
You know, and the thing is here is most organizations, this is their be-all end-all identity storage, right? So. And also, 90% of all breaches are actually, you know, involve credential misuse or some sort of attack against Active Directory. You know, this statement here, I like it, but like systemic weaknesses make like AD a soft target. This is true, but don't forget AD is as old as I am in the IT world. It's 23 years old, right? Yep. So, so this was introduced in the year Server 2000 days. Anyone here for the Server 2000 days? There you go, all right?
Good times, good old days. Not good old days.
Those are the good days, right? So yeah, so a big thing here now is that the way most cloud identities are architected is that, you know, your cloud identity extends from your on-prem Active Directory. So, so that means, you know, if your AD is weak, chances are your cloud identities are also weak.
Absolutely.
Right? So, and the biggest one here now, the biggest buzzword in the industry is zero trust. Everybody talks about zero trust. Well, guess what? Zero trust assumes, and I hate to use the word assume, but assumes that hybrid identity is, you know, intact.
Integral.
Right? Exactly. So a little story, quick one. I was involved in a compromise recovery and an incident response involving a manufacturing company. The biggest thing was, when I got called in, they basically were in the midst of a ransomware attack against their whole organization. Domain controllers, file servers, pretty much everything, right?
Yeah.
So we quickly cut off their factories from the network. So each factory essentially ran an independent version of AD for a little while. Otherwise, they were going to lose their factories too. So they were looking at millions of dollars a minute in manufacturing downtimes. So, but the big thing here, like the slide says, like isolation from Office IT is generally not like the most comprehensive. It is often incomplete. So, and also, you know, like if an AD is down, your factory is down. Most organizations a lot of their manufacturing devices actually run like domain-connected Windows machines. So if AD is down, your line is down.
Yeah.
There we go.
Got animations there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Sorry,
It's all good.
unexpected animations. So 90% of active directories, like most attacks, 90% of them are actually AD based, right? So a lot of these here on the right, they're actually attacks that happened roughly in February 2023. Again, U.S. Marshal Service, City of Oakland, Modesto, and Dish Network.
Hold on, Paul. Okay, I think we have a quick question here
Yep.
from Ali.
In the example that you gave of the factory,
Yep.
was this environment, was it public cloud, private, was it hybrid? What kind of environment were you
It was a hybrid, right? So they were just moving towards like Office 365 and like moving things to Azure workloads. But for the most part, it was actually like an on-prem environment. Like their factories were on-prem. I think each factory had roughly 1,200 nodes per factory. So it was a pretty big compromise.
And that's why I'll always say to people, it's important to have a solid business continuity plan before doing your cloud migration, or even while you're planning it, so you understand the criticality and can organize it in a way. And that actual migration plan can actually be reused as your disaster recovery plan. Yeah.
So in terms of the city of Modesto, they actually gained access to a limited subset of social insurance numbers, social security numbers. This is the U.S. at this point, right? And they promised for credit recovery or credit monitoring, right? So they figured it was about a city of 2,000 or 2,500 people, 25,000 people, 2,500 were affected. At about $10 a month, just alone, the cost of the credit monitoring was going to be $300,000 a year. That's not even for anything in terms of recovery or anything like that. It was just alone, just to cover, going forward.
Devastating. It's crazy.
And again, like I talked about earlier, just because you say, well, I'm going to the cloud or I'm moving to the cloud, I'm safe. Well, that's not entirely the case, because there are some serious hooks from your on-prem environment into your cloud environment. There's not many environments I know that are actually pure cloud right now for identity-wise, right? Like there are some, but generally they're newer companies that kind of start their inception. They actually start
in the cloud.
They're in the cloud.
Exactly.
But most legacy environments are actually on-prem first, and then we've modified it later on to become cloud identities. So what does this all mean? Well, AD is actually fundamental to your organization's security, right? Like I know some people, like some organizations I've been to in the past in different roles, they see it as just a service that they consume and that's it, right? But it is probably the most attacked service in an organization. So an AD is highly vulnerable, and that is not because Microsoft's not doing a good job of trying to protect it. It's because most people actually don't take the time and effort to actually fix the things that need to be fixed. And sometimes you're not ready for what's actually coming down the pipe. We don't know. There's new attacks all the time. Like the SMB v1 attacks a few years ago, back in 2020. We're looking at that as yes, okay, SMB v1 was a very insecure protocol and old, but we didn't know it was going to be that bad, that quick.
Exactly.
Right? So, and then going forward, AD must be protected and purpose-built for security. So, another one, ITDR. I know it's on the screen here, but if I told you ITDR, what would you think it meant? This guy. So, anyone? ITDR?
Ali in the back.
There you go.
probably related to a fancy KPI that I put on my list, mean time for detection or mean time to respond.
There you go. Yeah?
DR in my company is disaster recovery.
See? And this is the problem right now with this name, right?
Is the problem with acronyms.
This is the exact problem.
I think we're okay for the
Yeah.
mic. Unless somebody needs it.
And that's an awesome point, and everybody sees DR and IT. We have two built-in names for our acronyms. IT is information technology, DR disaster recovery. So, but as an actual fact, it's identity threat detection and response. So being proactive and reactive for identity. Any questions so far?
So how does that, just going on that, Paul,
Yep.
how did that, because of that whole association with ITDR, how do you recommend us non-identity professionals kind of think about identity threat detection and response?
That's a great question. So identity threat, like, you should actually really use like protective controls and detective controls, even though if you don't fully understand identity, there are tools out there and processes that we can put in place to give advance warning of potential credential abuse or identity abuse, right?
So offense is great, but defense wins championships.
Exactly.
Any Boston Celtics fans in the house? Probably not. Okay.
Oh, that's a little
Yeah.
bit early, a little bit early.
Maybe it's too soon.
Yeah.
But
So,
it's good to have a two-way game.
So yeah, you hit it on the head. Offensive is great, but defensive is by far where you're going to win the game.
100%.
All right. So
Ali in the back.
yep.
Just expanding on what you said over there, and it's very interesting because we are actually in my organization going through a bit of an overhaul in terms of our Active Directory deployment. I've been speaking to the folks at Semperis as well. Curious to know, when you mention identity detection response, how do you see that as different from an IOC, like an indicator of compromise? Because when identities are compromised, it's compromised. I mean, but
Right.
in this case, you're suggesting there could be some indicators, like you said, that give you advanced warning
Right.
that
Precursors.
identities specifically are being targeted. Can
Right.
you just explain that a little bit?
So I guess the best way to look at it is identity, like ITDR, like IOCs are a part of ITDR. So ITDR is a bigger category, so there's multiple tools there. Whereas, like, say, we have one tool in particular called, ADFR, DSP, so Directory Service Protector. We integrate with DSP indicators of compromise and indicators of exposure for purely identity, right? So that we have integrated that into our product as one of 3 or 4 different ways we actually protect your Active Directory at that point. So, like we're watching, so for example, like, DSP is, it looks at indicators of compromise, indicators of exposure. It's watching AD in real time, so it's watching replication and it's recording changes in real time. And we're kind of relating all that together, and we're using all that data that we're pulling in to actually look at indicators of exposure and compromise at the same time.
So how strongly does your business, everybody in here, just a show of hands, would you say mission critical, business critical, essential, can stay till Monday? Like if you lost 80 today in-house, does everybody know how that impacts your business today? It's essential. I like that. I think so as well.
There you go.
But 90% of the times when I go into organizations assisting them with their infrastructure improvements, they're not even aware of AD, to be quite honest with you. And that's where the information, I think education from the crowd in the room is so essential, right? AD is essentially, if designed properly, could be the root core of your entire business operation, especially if you're a Microsoft or Windows shop, right? And this is why the recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives are so critical. Now, another show of hands. Everybody in here done a business continuity review just to understand how, oh, I love that, that's great, these are good signs, right? And this is so essential to the actual process of understanding your recovery process. Now, as mentioned before, we typically manage these nowadays for cloud migrations because everybody wants to get to the cloud because the cloud is perfect. But just a quick secret, if you have problems on your premise or in your co-location, you will migrate them to the cloud. And I think this is a great opportunity for people to take a step back, talking with the business and your technology team about a comprehensive patch management strategy, which should include vulnerability management, especially for AD. And even if it's never happened, the best time to start is now. This spreadsheet is a business-facing spreadsheet that talks about what the core systems are and the, order of recovery or order of migration. Right? The reason why we want to talk about this is because, we put email on because everybody uses it, and then that's when the fun times start, right? The mission critical team says, mine is more important, and usually it starts. I will argue to say that before restoring services to any of these customer-facing systems, both internal, essential, or even mission critical customer-facing, you're going to want to understand what your domain controllers and your Active Directory restart and recovery program is. This is a high-level overview of a DR plan, disaster recovery plan. I would essentially say that it's very important to focus on what your needs are from an infrastructure perspective first, and then determine what your requirements or prerequisites would be to support that. If you are interested in taking a look at your BCP plan, and again, this is not a sales to the Cyberattacks team, just saying, you can, I have my link at the end of this presentation. I'd be happy to have a conversation. I'm here all day. Love talking about cyber and how we can safely restore services. And yeah, Thank you so much for that minute. I'll pass it over to Paul to talk a little bit about AD security specific.
All right, so this is one kind of little red flag that we always see a lot of in on-prem Active Directories. So essentially, if you send up a domain today, like an Active Directory domain, the default configuration will have essentially, in this pre-Windows 2000 compatibility access, we'll have some, groups in there that we probably don't want in there, which is probably going to give unfeathered access for reconnaissance. Even authenticated users is probably, in my mind, probably a little bit too much, because that means anyone who's authenticated against the domain can read all attributes of pretty much everything in AD. So yeah, but now mind you, I don't want you to go out and remove authenticated users in your forest when you go home tonight, because I don't want anyone doing any resume generating events, which that would probably do. That would probably break some applications, right? So you got to be careful of that. But again, this is just an example of if you really don't know Active Directory, or if you kind of are just learning Active Directory, there's 1,000,001 things that you got to know, out of the gate.
Yeah.
Right. And we're here to help. I'm here to help. We're all here to help for sure.
Absolutely.
There we go. So how can we do this? Well, there's some free tools out there, like Forest Druid, for example. Will actually look at attack paths against your Active Directory. So it will take, it will look at your domain controllers and then go backwards, and it will say, okay, how can a person gain access to my domain controllers? How can a person compromise my Active Directory? Force Druid will actually tell you different paths. It will say, oh, this person has way too much privilege. This person, this group, it has generic all on the full forest. That's a bad one, by the way. Don't ever do any of that. So Ping Castle is another one. It's a command line tool, that people use for actually finding, security posture for your Active Directory. And then we have a tool also called Purple Knight. It's a vulnerability scanning tool. Biggest thing here, biggest sales, not sales point, but the biggest point I like to make is that it doesn't require domain admin. Most tools require some sort of elevated privilege. This does not. Yeah. So this will give you a full-on, report of everything that you should be aware of in your Active Directory and your AAD.
I strongly encourage everybody in this room to download Purple Knight. It is a really cool, easy-to-use tool, and it always identifies something. Even if you're not the expert AD administrator, running this tool or having your AD admin run this tool is going to discover some items there that are very important to your existing operation. Yeah. It's active. Yeah. This is also very important. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
this
I
is
would
very
probably
important.
let 'em know
Yes,
ahead of
good call. Good call. Yes, absolutely. But it's a really important tool. It talks a lot about what Ali was mentioning earlier about the IOEs and IOCs, and it kind of presents it in English, which is usually helpful for business-speaking business users, so that they can communicate effectively to the tech teams on what needs to be changed.
And then, Purple Knight gives you a point in time. So you keep running it, see where you're going,
Yep.
see how
you
you're
can
improving.
See the progress over time. It's a really great tool.
Yeah, it's cool. So this is not me, by the way. I know it kind of looks like me, but it's not me.
It's you. No.
That's what I keep saying. It's not me. But, no, I'm just joking. So, but so the thing is, there's so many attack vectors out there now. What is going on in Active Directory world? There's a lot, right? So Mimikatz, DC Shadow. Anyone aware of Mimikatz? What that tool is? There you go. So this thing is the bane of AAD's existence, basically, right? So group policy changes. So a simple group policy change could have a massive effect on your environment, massive. I've seen one situation over the years where someone put Mimikatz in the login script in a group policy.
Of course.
Right?
That must have been a fun day.
I did see that. Right? So zero logon attacks, again, I'm looking for unexpected password changes, wrongly configured AD audit settings. So are you actually pulling in the information that you require to find these attacks coming on? One of the biggest things is attackers will come in, first thing they do is patch your DCs. That's generally the first thing they do, right? And then they go and then they turn off your auditing. Right?
Yep.
So
they're making changes to see if we're on our square, right? So they make small changes that could be benign, but it's always, you're not managing what you're not measuring, so it's always important to stay on top of it.
And things you're not looking for, like auditing change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how many people here have a super long password? Super long. That's good, right? So the thing with AD is, so there's two types of authentication methods in AD. There's NTLM and there's Kerberos, right? Kerberos, pretty good, right? It was probably better 10 years ago, but it's still pretty good, right? Versus NTLM. NTLM, if you have admin on your PC and I compromise you and you have some sort of privilege in your domain, I can harvest your password hash quickly. So regardless of how long your password is, that hash is going to give me access to wherever you have access. So, and this is where that Forest Druid tool comes in earlier we talked about, is that, now we can understand you have privilege here, right? So why, what can I get to based on your privilege and who else can I compromise? I went to another customer years ago and they told me they had this super long password and they had super long process about getting built-in administrator for your own computer. I'm like, that's awesome. I want to see how you did this. And what they did was they actually put a group policy on every computer and they put a group in there. And then if you got admin access to your PC, they put you in this group. So what they did, they effectively gave 2,000 people full admin access to every PC in an organization.
Company, crazy.
Right? So, and then they asked me, have you been attacked? I'm like, it's not a question of have, it's a question of when, exactly.
That's so important. Like having the system is one component, but having it well configured is the target, and it's always what should be done. Because if you have it misconfigured, then it's just an open door to the internet, to be quite honest.
Right. So what is something that we can do? Well, scan your AD for unexpected changes. That's probably one of the biggest things. So there's some manual ways of doing it, exactly, via metadata. Look at your metadata.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, that's lots of fun. Yeah. That's a layer below AD almost kind of thing. So, but there's free tools out there on GitHub that actually allows you to kind of look at that via scripting. So, for example, we list out anything that has privilege groups, anything that has privilege in your environment, and then you can say, okay, alert me on changes to these groups. The problem is with privileged groups is that out of the box, everybody's going to tell you domain admins, scheme admins, enterprise admins, all that fun stuff, right? But there's probably groups in your organizations that actually give full access to all the computers in a fleet, or all the servers in a fleet.
That's right.
So that also is massive privilege. But we don't, out of the box, there's no built-in group that kind of say, so you had to know what those are.
Quick show of hands, how many in here do a service account review, privilege user account review on a regular basis? Awesome.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yes, well done, guys. The things that make us happy, I tell you.
So, and other things too, sorry. Let me go back. There you go.
Works.
So yeah, so other monitoring tools will tell you things that are changing, but it's the replication stream that kind of really makes it worthwhile. Because if someone's already turned off your auditing, right, chances are you're missing something. So by watching the replication stream itself, you're going to pick up on things that maybe people are potentially trying to hide. For example, Kerber roasting, golden ticket attacks. If you look at it in a certain way, the way people get in is they use reconnaissance. So again, everybody has read access to AD. I'm going to look for any user that has a service principal name. Mm-hmm. That's a dead giveaway that that user account has some serious privilege, right? So what do we do there? Well, if you look at that, you probably look at a user account in real time. Oh, did someone actually add an SPN? Did someone change an SPN? Right? That's also one way we can do it, right?
100%.
Any questions so far?
Questions from this crowd, anyone? No? Okay. Perfect.
So how can you ensure a fast and safe AD forest recovery? Well, the problem is that an attack on Active Directory, everybody's going to go to their backups, right? So, but what happens is that AD servers can't be trusted at this point. So now we're going to go restore, right? Now, the dwell time for malware in the 2022 from Sophos was 20 to 52 days. So that means they've been already there sitting anywhere from 20 to 52 days.
In your backups.
In your backups, right? And most people, the validity generally tends to be about 14 days. So guess what's getting captured in your backups? Right?
The malware.
So, conventionally restored domain controller will have malware on them. So then you got to go through a whole separate process. Do we trust this domain controller? We got to go dig deep. We got to so because like we can't really trust those AD services, like servers, the domain controllers that we actually brought back, then how can we really trust the AD service right there and then? We can't.
Can't.
Right?
Yeah.
So due diligence has to be done ahead of time. So generally install malware requires DC admin rights. Anyone know what DC admin rights is?
Domain control.
Domain admins. Right? So chances are, you know, if the installed malware still exists in your backups, they still have access to your domain admins somehow. So admin rights on one DC is access to the entire forest. So there's one thing I've seen in the past where people were using, no, I'm going to date myself because I don't even think it's called this anymore. It's SCCM. Right?
System Center.
System Center config
Used to be,
manager.
you didn't say mom, so that's okay. That'd be really dating it. Anyhow, yep.
So the thing is, SCCM could push software, and people would actually use SCCM to patch their domain controllers. It has an agent on the Windows machine, right, which is the domain controller. Essentially what they did was they compromised an SCCM admin. They created a package that created a one-line script and basically inserted someone into domain admins on that one domain controller, and then AD replication took it and replicated
Spread
it
the
right
love.
through it, right?
My gosh.
So that they never even compromised a domain admin at that point, or an AD administrator. They compromised someone who was pushing software packages, right? So,
Intended to be a vulnerability management component too, so it's all deemed safe by network traffic admins, right? So
yep.
it's crazy.
So like, you know, like rebuilding AD, like, okay, so we got into this situation now. Like, what are we gonna do, right? Like, so this is a laundry list of even the things you need to know even before you start. So, you know, like, sorry, this is on the wrong slide. So it's not just with the AD. So essentially, if you get into a situation and then people say, we're gonna rebuild. Okay, well, how are you gonna rebuild? You know, are we going back from domain, like, are we going back from backups? Well, do we trust our backups? Do we even look at this and say, okay, how am I going to bring back this forest? Well, we can stand up a new domain, new forest. Is that even here? Like, we're basically starting from zero again. So we had to rebuild everything. So if we go down this, like, you're looking at a potentially corporate extinction event, like if you get into a full forest restore situation. And like, well, I know that's being a little bit dramatic, don't get me wrong, right? Like, but the thing is, if your backups are not valid, then you...
What else are you going to do?
What else are you
right?
gonna do?
You're going to have to rebuild from scratch, and then BCP and manual, and it could be a nightmare, and this is why.
Yeah.
Well, the next slide really kind of highlights a lot of the heavy lifting as
Yeah,
well that's
yeah.
required.
But yeah, like there's one customer essentially got in a situation where, you know, we were called in to help, and then next thing you know, like, so just go get a backup. We had to go back 20 days of backups. So
At least he had 20 days.
at least he had 20,
That's the thing,
exactly,
right?
right? But imagine how many people changed their passwords in 20 days and all the service desk calls when you restored AD,
Exactly.
right? Kind of thing. So, and then better to prepare. So what do you need to know? You need to know a fair bit already. Like, so what does your AD topology look like? What, you know, what are your disaster recovery passwords? Every DC has its own disaster recovery password, right? You know, do you know those? Most people don't, right? And that's specific to each domain controller. That's not something that's held in the domain.
No.
That's per server, okay? You know, like, how does your DNS set up? Is it AD integrated? Are you using like info blocks or something like that? You know, like,
It's complex.
yeah, like, you know, what kind of OS versions do you have? Like, are we looking at 2008 R2 DCs? Please don't tell me you got 2008 R2 DCs. Right?
Still gets shudders from that. Yes, R2.
Yeah. Yeah, it's R2, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, at least when you're taking backups, take backups of at least 2 DCs per domain in the forest, right? Honestly, that's the bare minimum. Don't take that as like, this is all you need. This is where you start.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. This is how you get to square one.
And then know the Microsoft AD Forest Recovery Guide inside and out. Like,
How many people have that offhand here? The AD recovery guide? Small.
before,
Yeah, 40 odd
47,
steps.
yeah,
exactly.
with sub-steps upon sub-steps upon sub-steps.
Small little book. Easy reading.
Yeah. If you're looking for the link's in actually the PowerPoint presentation if you want to go for some light reading. Yeah.
If you're having trouble sleeping.
Yeah. So, like, in terms of a manual process, this is essentially all the steps that it would take to bring back AD. If you're looking at saying start to finish, someone go get me a backup, someone build me a server, right? This is where it's going to start. So,
Look like fun?
It's not, yeah, it's not a fun process.
Not at all. Not at all.
And like it's like in manual processes are definitely prone to, errors. It's something that, I've been involved in a few of these before. And it's not pretty, and it's not fun, and generally, people are in a state of panic at this point. Because they're down, they're losing money fast, they're getting screamed at from all levels, right? And then I guarantee you, people are not in the right state of mind at this point in time, right?
Here, here.
So, the general purpose backup that you would take normally would take about, it's used in step 3 as the first automated restore, but then after that, it becomes a very manual process. So, this number can vary depending on the size of your organization, but at the same time, this is, I forget where we get the stat, but it's 10 to 15 people, dedicated to bringing back AD. And then, so for us, we have a new product called AD, well, new, it's one of our core products, actually. It's ADFR, so Active Directory Forest Recovery. So, whereas the manual process could take days to weeks, we can have you back in minutes to hours.
And I have examples if you want to see it in real time. It's not sales speak. I wouldn't be up here if it was.
Yeah.
It actually works, and it's amazing.
So yeah, I think the biggest, this one, I don't want to get too far into it, but if you do a system state or a full backup, you're looking at 18 gigs or 11 gigs of backups. We can back up our Active Directory in about 500, it says 116 megs there. I would say 500 is probably a good number,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, we don't take the bad stuff. We take only the things we need, and we leave all the bad stuff behind. So again, same thing. So what does ADFR do? Well, it gives you a clean restore. So we can actually restore into a bare metal environment. We can actually use the files that we pick up in our backup, project them into a Windows server that you've built and that is clean and good, and then you can bring back your first domain controller in your environment, right? So that enables the rapid recovery. That also gives you advanced automation also. So essentially, it's a 6-click process.
One quick point here is if you are working with Semperis and Oppos on these type of engagements with Active Directory, you also have the access to our team. So we have a full 24/7 SOC team that have experts from Microsoft, Active Directory perspective, MVPs, that help with that reestablishment of service and connectivity. And so it's a really it's a really good deal because you're getting a complete SOC restore service system MDR just by basically ensuring availability of your Active Directory system.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah.
So same thing, anywhere recovery. It doesn't have to be in your exact environment. You can build it in an air-gapped environment, test it, and then move back into production.
Yeah.
We also this actually has another tool called Purple Knight Post Breach. It's actually a version of the Purple Knight free tool that I talked about earlier. What it does, it actually, once you bring back a domain controller after a ransomware attack or some sort of attack, you can actually run the post-breach Purple Knight to see if there's anything remnants left in AD.
Oh,
right?
That's awesome.
So a real-life incident. This is best that I can make the chaos look real. Is it kind of so essentially and this is even kind of putting in the ADFR pieces too. So AD's been targeted. What are we going to do? Well, we got to look and see what actually has gone wrong, right? So now we got to make a decision. While we're looking, we're rebuilding AD on the side. So once we're going to take this copy that's still in probably an isolated environment, harden it, implement tiered models, look at OU permissions, see if there's any kind of pervasive permissions that are in there that are kind of causing some issues, and then we'll probably left as a backdoor. GPO, we're going to look at GPOs, see if there's any changes there, any kind of questionable settings. Once we're happy with it, and we're going to basically make the decision to shut down the old AD and then bring up the new forest in production. And then from there, once we have that one clean, so ADFR can do a number of things. We can bring back a number of domain controllers through the same process, or at that point, we can just promote new domain controllers into the restored forest. Oh, I think
Oh, wrong button.
I blanked it out. That was
There you
my
go.
bad. So, what are some takeaways? Was that too much too fast? I'm sorry. So AD is, while AD is a pretty cool, and it's my love, and I love technology, and I love identity. You know, AD is pretty much the Achilles heel right now of most businesses today. Not because AD is like not strong and not resilient, it's just that most people don't actually take the time or have the know-how to actually make the changes. Right?
Configuration is key. If I could summarize that, like configuration is key and preparedness is the second key. If you're not configured properly, you probably are hacked already. Have a discussion, download the free software, test your system yourself. If it's bigger than a bread box, reach out, give us a call. We love to optimize the ecosystem. We're not all about, like, we're obviously a commercial business, but it's more about helping you educate and empower yourselves and earning that value and earning that business. It's important, especially if you're in a Windows environment.
That's
Just, you know, for your own assurance.
That's a great point. And an attacked AD or a compromised AD doesn't really mean that your cloud is also protected also. Like there's obviously different hooks and different things, but we can, you can't actually, until you actually do a thorough investigation of your Azure Active Directory, you can't be sure that they never got there either.
Exactly. Essentially, it's migration to the cloud. So as we said, if it's anything you have on-prem or in colo, that's exactly what's going to migrate to the cloud.
Yeah, like one of the biggest mistakes I've seen people do is they take a synced account from on-prem AD, pitch it to Azure AD, and then that becomes global admin.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So you compromise that on-prem account, you get global admin access in Azure AD, right? So
way to scale a problem quickly.
yeah, that compounds pretty quick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, and locking down the default AD securities can decrease the chance of intruders, right? So again, decrease, right? We can't guarantee 100% all the time. And like I tell people, you know, protective controls is detective controls. Like that's the way I look at it now, right? So
100% agreed.
And, you know, like, for example, there's small things that you can do in AD right now just to kind of put a defense and depth strategy in place. Like, you know, like user right assignments. Like these are small little changes that we can make. Again, test please before you make some changes.
Yes.
That's all I ask.
Change
right?
management principles.
Yeah, and then continuous scannings. Like, you know, like let's just look at, like, just keep an eye on your AD. That's basically the way I look at it. Right? And be prepared for the worst. Like, I know, like, I'm up here talking like doomsday stuff, but for the most part, your everyday Active Directory is going to be running until when disaster strikes. Then you're gonna say, "Where's my disaster recovery plan?"
Yeah.
Right?
or worse, others from the business, like the C-suite, asking, "Where's that plan that you guys said you had?"
It's always
Tough
fun.
question.
So, yeah, you know, and like I keep telling, like a little sub point is,
You ladies, yeah.
domain admins, for example, is the keys to the Active Directory, right? Like you will get in there. If you get in there and you get a domain admin credential, you pretty much own AD at that point. Like it's not AD is not yours anymore. You're sharing it with someone else, right?
100%.
And they don't have your best interest in mind, right? So the way I tell people now is like domain admins, you know, protect themselves from themselves, right?
Exactly.
By not allowing them to log in anywhere but a domain controller. That greatly reduces the potential of you potentially someone going rogue on you, basically.
100%.
Yep.
Time-based access privileges. There's a few things that we can do to kind of mitigate those risks, but it's important that you're thinking of them so that you can come up with these concepts.
All right,
Cool.
I'm good. So
You good? So do we have any questions from the crowd? Thoughts on Active Directory? Yes.
Okay. I have a question on the platform you talked about, ADFR, the recovery platform, where you take the backup.
Yep.
Is that periodic backup or that schedule is in the hand of the person who's using it?
oh, sorry, what was that? Sorry, like last part there? Sorry.
Is that a periodic backup that I
Periodic
can
backup.
schedule, that it's going to happen after 7 days all the time, or some point like 4 p.m.
Okay.
Friday?
So essentially, it's configurable. So you can do like you can do point-in-time backups. So full backups. Usually, what I recommend is full backups on weekends, and do incremental backups on weekdays. So you get and actually do multiple. So do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Right. So
And do you use any kind of an encryption for the backup?
yeah. So it's all encrypted. All backups are encrypted and stored on a separate file server off the domain.
Okay. With this being said, at any time you are, or the person who's using it can go and decrypt a certain information in the backup.
Only if you have admin rights, so it's up to you to put a good RBAC model
Privileges,
in place. So if you limit the number of people that have access to ADFR server, only they can actually unencrypt the backups.
And they can use any platform to decrypt that information, or that's within the platform.
That's only within the platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
For sure.
Question out of your experience, the AD exploitations take major. So, as per your experience, just out of curiosity, most of the AD exploitations, they are because of the misconfiguration or because of the vulnerabilities? I'm
Most-
asking
yeah.
because I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, your misconfigurations are by far the biggest share of attacks. Like, there was a stat that was a couple of years ago was used, like, an attacker's ROI on going after your AD is 1,000%. Okay?
Always
So-
something wrong, always a door.
Right.
But that being said, vulnerability management's right there. So if you do have an active patch and vulnerability program, that should cover off for those vulnerabilities. But as Paul is alluding to, misconfigs for sure are, because a lot of people think I have an AD, so it's fine.
Yeah, I also clarify because cybersecurity, most of the attacks are happening because the human inside the organization, they don't take care of the appliances or maybe the configurations better.
Correct.
It's not the
Mhm.
hackers who are attacking all the time. It's because of your misconfigurations within,
Yep.
Yep.
which are causing you trouble, more trouble than what outsiders are causing.
Yeah, and they're just walking in
They're
and
just
taking
knocking
advantage
doors.
of what's presented in front
Most
of them.
people are just probing and knocking on door. Oh, it's open? Great.
Yeah, yeah, it's just
Right? And the thing is, every Tuesday, Microsoft's like, oh, all these exploits, and the hackers are actively looking at it. People like myself are actively, but are you and your business actively looking at Patch Tuesday? And that's where they get us, right? They specifically target new exploits and go after them.
yeah, and like say 0-day attacks, for example.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
everybody's like the big bad is 0-day attacks.
Yep.
Right? But the thing is, a 0-day attack, they're super expensive to acquire, and then they just give you the vulnerability. They don't give you how to take it, right?
Yeah.
Then you had to go weaponize it, right? So
Correct.
On dark web, they sell those kind of
Yep.
exploits. I mean, they don't contact it,
no,
but they sell to you.
yeah.
As a service,
It's
200
like,
bucks.
here you go. Right?
Yeah, it's,
Ransomware as a service,
yeah,
malware as a
Raz,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very, very, and cheap, which is scary. It's scary.
Yeah, and like I tell a lot of my customers, like as we're on the defense most of the time, we had to be right 100% of the time.
Yes.
Right? Whereas one person just got to get lucky that we forgot one thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Right?
So if you want to get in touch with us, there's Paul's contact information there. You can please scan him and add him on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And then
Also,
Oppos.
yeah, also myself. You can add us on LinkedIn. As I've mentioned before, always happy to have a conversation about the cybersecurity ecosystem, Active Directory or otherwise. Regulatory compliance is sort of my thing, like ISO, GDPR, SOC 2. So if you have any of those concerns or questions, don't hesitate to give me a shout.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
what's that? Oh, my
no.
QR code isn't working? Of course it isn't. Anywho,
that's technology for you.
yes. You can go back to Paul's slide. It probably
Oh,
works.
sorry. There you go.
There you go.
There's my QR code.
James. No, I was joking. It's all good.
I never thought I'd be reduced to a QR code up on stage. One.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah, Serena, sure.
You have to keep two backup system with your system. Like if you keep the Semperis and the 80 backup, and then you'll keep all your data on a separate backup. How is
So
it interrelated? How would it
So,
work?
so the AD backup will be held, like, encapsulated in one file, or not one file, but like one set of files, right? Whereas another product that we have actually watches AD in real time, recording the changes that happen, and that's actually in a separate SQL database somewhere else.
Hi.
So what do you think is preventing people from actually doing what you're telling people to be doing? What's the maybe top 3 things? Inertia, like
I have one. I think it works really well 90% of the time, and that's a problem. Like when you have a system that is so dependable and reliable, a lot of the times it's like infrastructure. People forget it's actually like running water or electricity. We just assume that it's there, not realizing that's a massive system to deliver these services to our fingertips. I think Active Directory is becoming that because it's essentially the system that all other applications ride on. People don't even know it exists.
Yeah. And like I think also too, it's like it's over time, like the knowledge of AD has kind of like it's not something that's cool anymore, kind of thing, right? So a lot of people don't actually get into Active Directory or don't get a chance to get into Active Directory because there's cloud and there's like SOCs and there's all kind of other things. Whereas like AD is such a beast. This is like you know, like people say I'm an AD expert. Well, you know one aspect of AD. There's 5 layers of AD below, like what everybody thinks AD is,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then like a book will tell you the first level, but you don't actually get a chance to even get your hands on learning the other pieces, kind of thing, right?
Unless you learn through experience like myself, which is not the way
Been
to
there,
learn.
done that. And also, probably like another point to like say it's like a third one is that, you know, if you harden AD, you make people's lives harder for some reason, somehow, right? And then people don't want that, so they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to turn off NTL MV1 because this application is going to break, right? And then you go to the application owner, you're like, can you fix it? And they're like, nah, it's good, right? So then you're stuck with a misconfigured. Or then you escalate it up to the C-suite, and they're like, is this business critical? And like, yes. They're like, don't touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of thing, right? So that's what happens, right?
Typically, yes. This is what. But it's changing, though. To be fair,
It is changing.
Things are changing, especially since COVID. I've noticed that security is actually getting. Well, what do you think, Darace? What do you think this is fine? And finally, we're at the table as opposed to. Can you just bolt something on before we get into production? Which is so. I'm glad that it's going back to a by design approach.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, this has been a great session. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you staying with us because I know it's interesting content. But again, if you do have any other further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Semperis as well as Oppos. We're here to help. Thanks, guys.
Partners.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. Thanks, guys.